Dimmi quando tu verrai, dimmi quando, l'anno, il giorno, l'ora in cui forse tu mi bacerai. Ogni istante
Beretta 84 BB Cheetah versus Beretta 80X Cheetah. A Cheetah comparison video.
improvviso ti vedrò.
We're at the beautiful Banner shooting range for another exciting Cheetah video. Today, our Beretta 80X Cheetah is going to go head to head in a quick range session with the Beretta 84 BB Cheetah, a previous version of the 80X. There are some noticeable and notable differences between these two firearms, slightly different grips in terms of the grip width. I believe the 80X has the updated Beretta trigger, whose name I always forget. The 80X has that attachment rail for a light, a laser, anything else you can think of that might fit. It also has replaceable sights, whereas the front sight on our 84 BB is integrated with a slide, though you could replace that rear sight, I suppose. I would say the biggest difference between these two firearms, other than some slight cosmetic tweaks, are on the 80X Cheetah, your safety is a safety decocker. You push the safety up until it cannot move anymore. It will decock the firearm and disengage your trigger. So you can't even cock the hammer. With your safety off, you can then carry this as a duty style firearm where your first shot is that longer double action trigger pull. Lock this open. On the 84 BB, while it too has a ambidextrous safety, that is not a decocker. That's actually just a safety. So when you put the safety on, you have your trigger disengaged, but you can carry this firearm cocked and locked, what we'll call 1911 style, where all you have to do is take your safety off and your firearm is ready to fire. Though, of course, you can also drop the hammer on it. And if you're so inclined, you can carry it hammered down, where your first trigger pull is that long double action trigger pull acting as your safety. Now let me look at something here real quick. Okay, when you use the decocker on the 80X, it doesn't fully drop the hammer. It drops it to around a half cock or quarter cock position. And you'll notice there's some take up on the trigger before you actually engage the, what we'll call the trigger mechanism. Though if you drop that hammer to the full decock, there's pretty much no take up, very minimal, I don't know, a millimeter or so of take up. On our 84 BB, with the hammer all the way down, even less take up. Pretty much no take up before you start to engage that trigger mechanism. You can also cock the hammer to half cock on this firearm. And while there is some take up, not nearly as much take up as on the 80X in that regard. So anyway, let's move on to the actual firing the firearms portion of the video today. I'll start with our 80X Cheetah. And what we're going to look at here is, does one of these firearms have a better trigger? To me, does one of them have less recoil, or do they have the same felt recoil? Because we have targets out there and target cam, I mean, it's impossible not to assess accuracy, though most of the accuracy difference will come down to the shooter, not the firearm, shall we say. So mostly we're going to look at recoil, trigger, reliability. Here we go, starting with the 80X, and I will do the first shot with these firearms, double action. I will do the 80X at our right hand, what I'm going to call the Zombie LaForge target. The brand on it is Allen Bullet Buddy, which doesn't sound very appealing. I'm going to speculate they couldn't use Zombie LaForge because of the Roddenberry estate wouldn't be happy, but that's just a from the gut fact. Anyway, here we go. 80X Cheetah, right hand target. center mass. Unfortunately, on the Zombie LaForge target, I can't tell how many hits are where, though it looks like I maybe got one in the armpit, that I can tell. The rest of them might be in the 10 ring, but we'll definitely need to rely on target cam for that. Let's see if we can do any better with our 84 BB. Now with the decocker on the ADX, dropping the hammer to half cock, I'm going to do this double action pull also from the half cock. Left hand Zombie LaForge target. Here we go. Okay, slide lock back on empty. I can see we have multiple hits in the green ring on that target and at least one in what we'll call the bullseye of the center mass. Though, again, because I can't see the hits on the right-hand LaForge target, I can't tell from here if the groups are any better. So we'll have to rely on target cam for that. Let's now do a second 10-round magazine from each firearm, this time aiming at the cranium zone of our Zombie LaForge target. This time I'm going to start with the 84 BB. I'm hoping to be able to divine a difference in the recoil between these two firearms. And I'll just do our first shot, both single action. So here we go, starting with the 84 BB. Okay, we didn't get the lock back on empty on that one. It seems to have a mind of its own, but again, we're not panicking on that if you saw our first video with that firearm. I can't tell where our bullets are hitting on the right hand LaForge target. On both targets, I can see at least one off the left ear. So we'll need to rely on target cam for that. I'll probably take a camera down and get a picture just in case they don't show up too well on target cam. So far, I'm leaning towards no noticeable difference in terms of felt recoil. They're very similar. I would say if there's a difference, and I think it comes down to the grips. To me, it feels like the grips make the 84 BB wider in the hand. And they also have a smoother, less aggressive texture compared to the more sandpapery texture on the ADX grip. Though so far, I would also say in terms of the trigger, while the ADX is touted as having an upgraded trigger, and it has a very good factory trigger, I'm inclined to say that the 84BB has both a better double action and a single action trigger. One thing I noticed when doing the single action mode is, and let me see if we can check this, is so firearm cycles, your trigger resets. At the reset point, there's no further travel, forward travel on the trigger from that reset point. Which I suppose those people that like to chase the reset point will be very happy about that. On our ADX Cheetah, there is a noticeable amount of travel, probably in the neighborhood of that much. We'll try to zoom in on that for you. That much extra travel from where the reset point is. So definitely a noticeable difference in terms of the trigger, though they're very similar. When I get home and I put this on the trigger gauge, we'll include a graphic on the difference in terms of the pull weight for both these firearms. We're going to finish out the day with, well, we said accuracy was mostly going to be on the shooter, and that's true. Let's do a little accuracy test. I have set up our little 2-inch challenge targets out there, and we have a 10-round magazine of Blazer ammunition loaded for each firearm. I'm going to do 10 shots at each target with each well, let me smooth it. I'm going to do 10 shots at the target with each firearm. The ADX Cheetah will be at the right-hand target. The 84BB will be at the left-hand target. I will do the first shot double action from both firearms. And we're going to count it up at the end and see which one has more hits, if any, on the target. We might as well start with the ADX Cheetah. Here we go. Right-hand target. Okay. Maybe 5 on the target, a couple more on the business card. We'll have to rely on target cam to count it up, but I at least have a few hits on the target with the ADX. Let's see if I can match that or do better, hopefully, with our 84BB. Here we go. Okay, I don't see any touching the bullseye like on our ADX target, though it looks like we have multiple on the perimeter of the target at around 11 o'clock. Maybe 2 more on the business card. We're going to have to heavily rely on target cam to see if there's a winner in this competition. I would say if there is a winner from right back here without having a close look at the targets, it looks like maybe the 80X Cheetah. And where I am going to chalk that up in is I have shot thousands of rounds through this 80X Cheetah, so I'm much more familiar with the sights and the point of impact. And I only have, I don't know, a couple hundred rounds at this point through the 84BB. And while I have a pretty good idea on where the sights and the point of impact are, I'm not quite as comfortable with the sights and the point of impact to say I am with the 80X Cheetah. Though I think with more time, if I didn't shoot the 84BB as good as the 80X in that last test, it's only a matter of time and practice before I do. Well, let's move on to some graphics and a conclusion for today's video. It's hard not to look at the Beretta 80X Cheetah and see the influence of earlier Cheetahs like the 84BB. With a blowback action, double stack capacity, external hammer, and frame mounted safety, the 80X retains many of the features of the classics before it, but also has some modern changes. We'll begin our deep dive look at the grips. The 80X uses Beretta's newer Vertec grip. This Vertec grip is straighter through the heel of the grip. Both the heel and the face of the grip feature some horizontal and vertical cuts in a checker pattern to add texture. The 84BB has just the vertical cuts. The grips on the 80X are thinner and feature a more sandpaper texture compared to the diamond checker grips on the 84BB. The 84BB features a lanyard loop at the base of the grip that's not present on the 80X. One area of the 80X some modern consumers are not fans of is the different beaver tail. On the 80X, this beaver tail is more pointed and at a more downward angle that bites into the hands of some shooters. The frame-mounted safety are fairly similar, though on the 80X, this is a decocker safety compared to just a safety on the 84BB. The hammer on the 80X is a modern skeletonized hammer compared to a more classic hammer on the 84BB. The 84BB has a rear sight and a dovetail, making it adjustable for windage and replaceable. The rear sight on the 80X is integrated in with the optics cover plate, making it neither easily replaceable nor adjustable. Forward of the grip, we have the trigger and trigger guard. The 80X features a more squared off trigger guard, which allows the user to perch an offhand index finger in front of it. The 84BB has the more classic curved trigger guard without that finger perch point. The triggers themselves are fairly similar, though there is a slight difference in single action and double action pull weights. The 80X has the lighter pull, though the 84BB has less over travel, take up, and a shorter reset distance. Forward of the trigger guard on the 80X, there's an attachment rail not present on the 84BB, making it easier to add an attachment like a laser or a light, which you can't very easily do on the 84BB. Above this attachment rail on the 80X are forward slide serrations. The 84BB has no forward slide serrations. And finally, there is a slight difference between the front sights on these two pistols. While both have a simple white dot front sight, the 80X is more squared off, and it's in a dovetail, making it easily replaceable, though the front sight on the 84BB is integrated into the slide and has a more curved front to it. It's not easily replaceable. In general, the 80X has a more squared off look all the way around, while the 84BB has that more classic curved look. Another important difference between these two is in the finish. The 84BB has the older blued finish, while the 80X has Beretta's newer Aquatech Shield finish on the slide, though it does retain a blued finish on the barrel. The 80X, with its more squared off features and attachment rail, is almost 3 ounces heavier compared to the 84BB. Now that we've got the features out of the way, to finish out the talking portion of today's video, let's talk about the shooting differences. Both having that blowback action, being a similar size, unsurprisingly, they shoot very similar. When shooting the two side by side, I was unable to notice any difference in felt recoil. Those with larger hands might prefer the combination of slightly larger grips and a less pointy beaver tail on the 84BB. Accuracy is another area I'm calling these two even matches. At times today I shot one or the other better, though in general, I'd say if I had the same amount of practice with both, I'd probably shoot them equally as well. The biggest question we've yet to answer is value. So which is the better value in 2025? Priced in that $600 ballpark, feature-packed with an all-metal construction, very good accuracy and reliability, the 80X finds itself as one of the more expensive 380s available today, but not so expensive as to not feel like a good buy, even if it's an expensive one. Priced in the $300 ballpark, while not quite as feature-packed, but with that same reliability and accuracy, all-metal construction, and the 84BB even used and in that 40-year-old ballpark is probably a great buy. So while it's not quite as new and likely to be found on a used shelf with obvious signs of use but not abuse, at half the price of the 80X, the 84BB finds itself, at least in my opinion, as a better value for the money buy, even for those with a more robust special effects budget than the rest of us. What do you think of the 80X versus the 84BB? Do you think the 84BB is the better value for money buy like I do? Or is there something about the 80X that puts it on top of the 84BB in your book? Let us know in the comments. Do you like the classic curves of the 84BB more, or that more squared off modern look that's feature packed on the 80X? Again, let us know in the comments. Well, anyway, that seems like the perfect spot to end today's video. If you enjoyed today's presentation, like the video, share it with your friends and family. Those things are free and they really help the channel greatly. If you didn't enjoy today's presentation, I like it anyway. No one's going to know you did it, and it helps us out a lot. Fred and I really appreciate you getting this far. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a nice night.
Frederick the Navigator. The drive of the Cork the Navigator. He says, Puman, take me to where the Cheetos flow. What do you think, Fred? Where do you think we'll see some wildlife today? In the wild. In the wild. What do you see over there, Fred? The biggity marks. Biggity marks. Biggity marks. Frederick's biggity marks. Frederick's a barking at it. What is this right here? Chop that one down.